The rapid clatter of Mark Calloway's shoes echoed through the busy corridors of New Earth's prestigious academy. The voices of both humans and aliens filled the air, a vibrant reminder that Earth had become a melting pot for interstellar diplomacy. Mark, a seasoned professor, waved at a group of Centaurians, their tentacles bobbing in greeting, before slipping into his office. Inside, holographic displays flickered amidst piles of ancient texts. Mark exhaled, running a hand through his graying hair. At 47, he felt the weight of his years more keenly, especially in contrast to the youthful energy that buzzed around the campus. "Computer, show me today's schedule," he said. A glowing list of lectures and meetings appeared before him. His gaze lingered on one entry, a guest lecture on Clytherian philosophy. The Clytherians were a mysterious race, known for their intense stoicism and strict social order. Unlike many other species, they kept a cautious distance from humanity. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Mark called. A human student, Sophie, peeked her head around the door. "Professor, your morning class is ready." Mark nodded, grabbing his tablet. "Thank you, Sophie. Let's explore some cultural memes, shall we?" But as he left his office, a feeling stirred inside him. A sense that today was going to be unlike any other. He just didn't know how right he was. Hours later, Mark found himself wandering through the grittier parts of New Haven, the capital of Earth's new age. Neon signs flashed in the rain-soaked streets, casting eerie reflections. "Where is he?" Mark muttered, checking his communicator. His old friend, Sam, had insisted on meeting here, claiming he had something extraordinary to show him. Suddenly, a hand clamped down on Mark's shoulder, making him jump. He spun around to find Sam grinning. "Mark, you made it." "Listen, this is big, but not exactly legal," Sam said in a low voice. "Sam, what are you talking about?" Mark asked, frowning. Without explaining, Sam pulled him into a shadowy alley, stopping at a nondescript door. Punching in a code, they entered a dimly lit room filled with a crowd. Humans and aliens alike gathered around a raised platform. Mark's breath caught. "Is that a Clytherian?" he whispered. The figure on the stage was unmistakably one of them. Her skin, a deep emerald hue, shimmered under the harsh lights. Her silver eyes darted around, filled with a mix of fear and defiance. Sam nodded grimly. "It's an underground auction. They captured her, and they're selling her to the highest bidder." Mark clenched his fists. "This is wrong, Sam. We can't just stand by. That's why I brought you here. I know you're always talking about doing the right thing. Well, here's your chance." The auctioneer's voice rang out. "Starting at 500,000 credits." Mark's heart raced. His savings, meant for a research sabbatical, flashed through his mind. But this was far more important. 700,000, he shouted before he could stop himself. The room went silent. "Sold," the auctioneer declared moments later. Reality hit Mark like a wave. What had he just done? The next hour passed in a blur. He handed over credits, signed documents. He knew it was all illegal, and then found himself standing in front of the Clytherian woman. Up close, she was even more striking. Her proud, sharp features were regal, but her eyes blazed with fury. "What's your name?" Mark asked softly. She glared. "Kyra," she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "But I doubt you care." "Kyra," he repeated gently. "I'm Mark. I just want to help." Kyra laughed bitterly. "Help? I know what your kind does to captives. I'd rather die than be your experiment." "Torture?" "No, Kyra, I'm not like that. I'm a teacher. I just want to get you out of here safely." Her silver eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Lies. You'll take me to whatever hell you've planned." Mark swallowed hard. "Please trust me. You're safe with me." But he knew this was just the beginning of a long, uphill battle to gain her trust. They left the auction and drove through the rainy streets in tense silence. Kyra sat stiffly in the passenger seat of his hovercar, her gaze flicking between him and the door as if calculating her chances of escape. Mark cleared his throat, trying to break the tension. "You know, I've studied Clytherian philosophy. Your views on stoicism are fascinating." Kyra turned to him sharply. "You study us like animals. Don't pretend to understand our ways." "I'm not pretending," Mark insisted. I teach interstellar ethics, and I respect your culture. She scoffed. You bought me like an object. Where's your ethics in that? Mark winced. I couldn't let them sell you. I didn't know what else to do. Her icy demeanor cracked, just a bit. And what's my fate now? What do you have planned for me? I only want to help you get back to your people, or wherever you want to go. Kyra fell silent, her expression unreadable. When they arrived at his apartment, Mark led her inside. The contrast between the high-tech world outside and his cozy, book-filled home was stark. Kyra's guard dropped for a split second as she took in the sight of physical books and cultural artifacts. But then her suspicion returned. This is not what I expected, she muttered. Mark gave a tentative smile. What did you expect? Chains. Torture devices. A dungeon, she replied coldly. I'm not like that, Mark said quietly. I'm not here to hurt you. Kyra's eyes flicked to the artifacts on display. You study us, she said, softer now. You really study our culture. Mark nodded. Yes, I want to learn to understand. That's why I became a professor. To bridge gaps between worlds. Kyra was quiet for a long time before finally speaking. I still don't trust you. But maybe you're not what I expected. Mark smiled, a flicker of hope in his chest. That's all I ask. A chance. As the night deepened, Mark knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The gap between their worlds was immense, but as Kyra retreated to the guest room, he promised himself he would show her that humanity was more than its darkest moments. He'd show her its potential for kindness, empathy, and maybe one day trust. The morning light filtered softly through the blinds of Mark's modest apartment. He stood by the kitchen counter, his hands wrapped around a warm mug of coffee, the rich scent filling the air. His mind was elsewhere, though, thinking of the strange, intense evening with Kyra. He knew she was still in the guest room, probably awake and alert. Every interaction with her felt like stepping onto unstable ground, the wrong word or gesture threatening to send her into deeper mistrust. The soft click of the guest room door made Mark's head turn. Kyra stood in the doorway, her tall, slender frame silhouetted by the warm glow of sunlight. Her emerald green skin shimmered in the morning light, a striking contrast to the deep shadows still clinging to her face. Her silver eyes found his, and he forced a smile. Good morning, Mark greeted, keeping his tone light. Did you sleep okay? Kyra didn't answer immediately. Her posture remained rigid, her eyes guarded. I slept, as well as one can when they're a captive. Mark winced. You're not a captive, Kyra. You're free to leave whenever you want. I'm not keeping you here. I'm just offering you a safe place for now. She crossed her arms over her chest, clearly unconvinced. If I walk out that door, where exactly would I go, Mark? Back to your people who put me on an auction block? Or do you expect me to believe you're the exception in a galaxy filled with humans like them? The words stung, but Mark knew better than to push back. He had to approach her cautiously, slowly, like coaxing a wounded animal out of hiding. I can't speak for all humans, he said, but I promise you, I won't hurt you. I'm trying to understand and help. That's all. Kyra's gaze softened just slightly, but her body language remained defensive. Then why? Why did you buy me? Mark set down his mug and turned to face her fully. Because I couldn't stand by and watch someone be treated like property. I knew what would happen to you if someone else bought you. I didn't have a plan, but I knew I had to do something. A long silence stretched between them. Kyra's silver eyes flicked toward the kitchen counter, where the smell of fresh coffee lingered. Mark noticed and hesitated before speaking. I know you don't trust me yet, but how about we start simple? Can I make you something to eat? You can watch me prepare everything if that makes you more comfortable. Kyra's eyes narrowed, suspicion creeping back into her expression. You think offering me food is going to erase what your people have done? No, Mark replied, shaking his head. But maybe it can be a start. We're both going to need some energy if we're going to figure out how to help you get back to your people. He paused, meeting her eyes. I don't expect you to trust me overnight, but I do want to show you that I'm not like those who hurt you. She studied him for a moment longer before nodding, ever so slightly. Fine, I'll watch. Mark moved to the fridge, pulling out a few ingredients, eggs, bread, and some fruit. He could feel her eyes on him as he worked, each movement scrutinized. The quiet was heavy, but he didn't mind. It was better than confrontation. He moved slowly, methodically, explaining each step as he whisked the eggs and sliced the fruit. Kyra's silence felt less like hostility and more like curiosity now, though it was hard to tell for sure. As he placed the food on the small kitchen table, he looked up at her. It's simple, but it's safe. You don't have to eat it if you don't want to. Kyra remained standing, staring down at the plate of food before her. She made no move to sit, her gaze flicking from the food to Mark, then back again. Why are you doing this? What do you hope to gain? Mark sighed. I don't expect to gain anything, Kyra. I want to help you because it's the right thing to do. That's all. Kyra's expression shifted, a flicker of confusion crossing her face, as though she couldn't quite believe him. She slowly reached for a piece of fruit, holding it up as though examining it for traps before taking a small, tentative bite. Kyra stood motionless for a long moment, the piece of fruit in her hand as though it held the weight of a decision much larger than simply taking a bite. She stared at it, then back at Mark, her sharp silver eyes trying to pierce through his intentions. Mark, on the other hand, pretended to be busy cleaning up the kitchen counter, giving her the space to make the next move. He knew better than to push her, even with something as simple as food. Finally, she took a small bite, her expression unreadable. There was no dramatic shift in her demeanor, no sudden sign of trust, but she continued to eat. Mark allowed himself a quiet sigh of relief. I know you're trying to understand, she said, breaking the silence. But you can't. Not fully. My people, we were taught to expect pain from your kind, not kindness. To us, humans are deceptive, greedy, driven by their desire to dominate. Mark paused, leaning against the counter and crossing his arms. I get it. Humanity doesn't exactly have the best track record, especially in the eyes of other species. There's a lot of fear and misunderstanding on both sides. But that doesn't mean we can't change things, right? Kyra's eyes narrowed, as if scrutinizing his words. Change? Humans? You've already spread across the galaxy like a virus, infecting everything you touch. What makes you think you're different? Mark bristled at her words, but forced himself to remain calm. I know it's hard to believe, but there are people, humans, who want peace, who want to understand rather than conquer. I chose to study interstellar philosophy and ethics for that reason. To try and build bridges. Kyra didn't respond immediately, her silver eyes scanning the room, taking in the artifacts, the books, and the small touches of alien cultures he had gathered throughout his life. You speak as if your intentions are pure, she said softly, almost more to herself than to him. But actions speak louder than words. Mark nodded, understanding. I agree. So, let my actions speak for me. She finished the fruit in her hand, slowly setting the plate down on the table. Tell me then, Mark, she said, her voice cold but curious. What's your plan? You bought me. Saved me from that auction, but now what? Where do I go? What happens to me? Mark exhaled slowly, his mind racing. This was the question he'd been avoiding. He had acted on impulse, buying her to save her, but he hadn't thought beyond that moment. What now? I want to get you back to your people, he said, but I know that won't be easy. We'd have to find a way to contact them, and after what happened, I'm guessing the authorities won't be eager to help. You'll need a place to lay low for a while, and I can offer you that. Kyra crossed her arms again, her expression hardening. And if I say no? If I decide to leave this place and try my luck on my own? Mark met her gaze, his face serious. Then I won't stop you. I meant what I said. You're not a captive. I just think it's safer if we come up with a plan first. I don't know what kind of network those auctioneers have, but they might still be looking for you. If you walk out that door without a plan, you could end up back where you started. Her silver eyes narrowed, the distrust still plain in her gaze. And why would you risk so much for me? You're risking your career, your freedom, maybe even your life. Why? Mark hesitated, feeling the weight of her question. Because I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. It's not who I am. Kyra studied him for a long moment, as if searching for any sign of a lie. You act like you're some sort of hero, Mark, she said, her voice soft but sharp. But you're just one human. What makes you think you can change anything? I don't, he admitted, but I'm willing to try. That's more than most people do. A silence stretched between them, the tension thick, but no longer hostile. It felt like something had shifted, like the barrier between them had cracked, just a little. "I need proof," Kyra said, breaking the quiet. "I need to know that you're not like the others. Words alone won't convince me." Mark nodded. "Fair enough. What do you need me to do?" She hesitated, clearly unsure herself. Her gaze flickered away for a moment before returning to him. "You say you study interstellar ethics, right? That you know about my people's ways?" "I do," Mark said, though cautiously. He wasn't sure where this was leading. Kyra straightened, her expression hardening into something more deliberate. "In my culture, promises are not spoken. They're proven through actions. If you're serious about helping me, there is a ritual, a test of trust. A challenge for both of us." Mark's brows furrowed in curiosity and concern. "A ritual? What kind of ritual?" Her eyes gleamed with something new, something deeper than the suspicion she had held before. "It's called the bond of sincerity. A vow made not through words, but through shared pain. If we complete it, I'll know you're serious. But if you fail, I'll walk out that door, and you'll never see me again." Mark swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. "What does it involve?" Kyra's face was stone, her voice steady. "We inflict the same pain upon each other. A controlled pain, one that cannot be fatal but is meant to test endurance, sincerity, and trust. In the end, we share the suffering equally. No more lies. No more doubt." Mark stared at her, his heart pounding. This was far beyond what he had expected when he'd made the decision to buy her at that auction. But now, standing in his small apartment with the fate of this strange, proud alien woman in his hands, he realized how much was at stake. He could refuse, and she would leave, vanishing into a dangerous world, her hatred for humans solidified. Or he could accept and prove that he was willing to cross a line most humans wouldn't, just earn her trust. Mark took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, Kyra, I'll do it." For the first time since they'd met, Kyra's expression softened. "Then prepare yourself, human. This will not be easy." Mark couldn't help but feel the weight of her words. Trust, it seemed, would be built not on promises, but on pain. The atmosphere in Mark's apartment shifted, growing heavy with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Kyra regarded him with a look that was both steely and uncertain, her posture shifting from defensive to focused. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with an underlying tension. "This isn't a game. If you're truly willing to go through with this, we must prepare." Mark nodded, though his stomach twisted with nerves. He had faced many challenges in his life, but this felt different, raw and visceral. "What do we need to do?" Kyra walked to the small dining table, pushing the plates aside to clear a space. "First, we need a way to mark the pain. Something simple, something that allows us to inflict the same sensation without causing irreversible harm." Mark followed her, feeling a mix of curiosity and dread. "How do you do that? Is it something cultural, or are there specific methods?" She picked up a small knife from the kitchen counter, its blade gleaming ominously in the light. "This is the traditional tool," she said, her voice serious. "We will use it to create small cuts on our skin. The pain will be brief, but it must be enough to prove our sincerity. In my culture, pain binds people together in a way that words cannot." Mark's breath hitched at the thought. "Small cuts? You mean we're going to cut each other?" "Yes," Kyra said, meeting his gaze with a level of intensity that sent shivers down his spine. "But it's more than just the cuts. It's about the willingness to endure for the other. If you can handle the pain I inflict, and I can handle the pain you inflict, we'll forge a bond of trust." Mark ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "And if one of us backs out, then it fails, and the trust remains unformed," she replied. "There are no half measures in this." He considered her words, the weight of the decision settling heavily on his shoulders. It was a chance, a leap of faith into the unknown. "All right," he said finally, his voice firm. "Let's do it." Kyra took a breath, her expression softening slightly. "We must be calm. If either of us flinches, the bond will be broken. We will start with the cuts, and then we will share the pain. Do you understand?" Mark nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. I understand. Kyra moved to the side of the room, her movements precise as she took a seat on a cushion that had been tucked away. Sit across from me, she instructed. It's important that we maintain eye contact throughout. Mark settled down across from her, feeling the weight of the moment bearing down. Kyra held the knife, the blade glinting dangerously in the light, and he watched as she carefully made a small cut on the back of her hand. A crimson droplet formed, rolling down her wrist. Now it's your turn, she said, her voice steady. You must match my pain. Mark took a deep breath, the reality of what they were doing crashing over him. He picked up the knife, his hand trembling slightly as he pressed the blade against his skin. He made a cut similar to hers, flinching at the sharp sting. The pain was immediate and jarring, but he focused on Kyra's eyes, anchoring himself to her. Good, she said, her voice unwavering. Now we share. Mark felt an electric pulse run through him as Kyra took his hand in hers, their blood mingling. We'll do this in cycles, she explained. We will each endure the pain the other inflicted, and then we will rest for a moment before repeating. It's important to maintain the connection. Okay, he replied, trying to stay focused. Let's go. As they continued the ritual, the pain built, growing into a rhythm of cuts and shared suffering. Each time they shared the pain, it felt as if a thread was being woven between them. Thin, fragile, but undeniably present. Mark could feel Kyra's focus, her determination matching his own. With every cycle, their breaths grew more synchronized, the air around them thickening with unspoken emotions. The physical pain was sharp and fleeting, but it was the emotional burden that weighed heavier. With each cut, they revealed pieces of themselves, their vulnerabilities, their fears, their hopes. Mark began to realize that Kyra was more than just an alien being. She was a complex individual shaped by her experiences, one who had endured pain and suffering at the hands of others. In this moment, as they exchanged pain, they were both opening themselves up to a deeper understanding of one another. After what felt like an eternity of sharing pain, they finally reached a point of stillness. They sat facing each other, breaths heavy but synchronized, their hands still linked. Mark could see the glimmer of something different in Kyra's silver eyes, a flicker of trust that hadn't been there before. Kyra broke the silence first, her voice softer now. You've endured well, Mark. It's rare for a human to take such pain willingly. You've proven your sincerity. Mark felt a warmth spread through him, a mixture of relief and something else, an undeniable connection forged through their shared experience. I didn't want to back down, he said, still catching his breath. I wanted you to see that I'm different. I'm here to help Kyra. She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. I can see that now. The bond we've created is not just about trust. It's about understanding each other. You've shown me that not all humans are the same. Perhaps you are right about wanting to bridge our worlds. Mark smiled, a sense of hope blooming in his chest. So what now? Where do we go from here? Kyra's gaze shifted thoughtful. Now we plan. I need to contact my people. There's a way to send a message to them through a hidden channel I know of, but we must be cautious. If the humans who sold me find out, they could come after us. What do you need from me? Mark asked, ready to help however he could. Your knowledge of human technology will be invaluable. We'll need to find a secure way to send that message without drawing attention. We also need to figure out where we can lay low until then, she said, her expression becoming serious. This will not be easy, but we must stay one step ahead. Mark nodded, feeling a sense of purpose solidifying within him. Let's get to work then. We'll find a way to get you back to your people. I promise. Kyra's expression softened, her previous distrust fading away, if only slightly. Thank you, Mark. This means more than you know. Together, they began to strategize, their shared pain transformed into a budding alliance. The first steps toward understanding each other were taken, and for the first time, Mark felt the possibility of true connection, a bridge forged not just through pain but through trust, respect, and a shared mission. As they worked side by side, the remnants of their ritual lingered between them, a palpable bond that would guide their actions in the days to come. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were partners, bound by shared experience, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Mark and Kyra delved deeper into their planning, the air in the apartment was thick with determination and unease. They had spent hours discussing potential strategies, but every idea seemed to come with its own set of risks. The longer they stayed in one place, the more vulnerable they became. "Let's go over the details of your message," Mark suggested, trying to keep his mind focused. "What exactly do you need to communicate to your people?" Kyra leaned forward, her silver eyes glinting with intensity. "I need to inform them of my situation and where I am. It's vital they know I'm safe, but also at risk. I have to warn them about the humans who capture me. They might come looking for me, and they need to be prepared." Mark nodded, scribbling notes on a data pad. "Can you tell me how to reach them? I can help you find a secure channel." Kyra hesitated, her expression clouded. "There's a network I can access, but it's heavily encrypted. It requires a specific device and a secure location to send the signal. I have one location in mind, but it's risky." "Where?" Mark asked, feeling a sense of urgency. "The old communication tower outside the city. It's abandoned and should be off the grid, but it's still functional," she explained. "I can send the signal from there, but it's guarded. The humans have a presence in the area, likely keeping an eye on it." Mark rubbed his chin, contemplating the situation. "Then we need to get there as soon as possible. We'll go at night, under the cover of darkness. It'll reduce the chances of being seen." Kyra nodded, her expression grim. "I'll need to gather the equipment before we leave. It's hidden in a safe place nearby, but we must be cautious. If anyone sees us, we'll draw attention." "Then let's get moving," Mark said, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety coursing through him. "What do we need to find?" Kyra stood and moved toward a small closet at the back of the apartment. She pulled out a backpack and began to sift through its contents. "I have some basic tools and equipment. I just need to retrieve a few more items, including the device for the signal." As she organized her gear, Mark felt a surge of admiration for her determination. She was resilient, a warrior in her own right, and he couldn't help but feel inspired by her bravery. "Let me help you with that," he offered, reaching for the backpack to assist her. She handed him the bag, a slight smile flickering across her lips. "Thank you, Mark. It's nice to have someone I can trust, even if it's only just begun." Mark returned the smile, the warmth in her gaze igniting a flicker of hope within him. "We're in this together now. Just like we went through the pain ritual, we'll face whatever comes next as a team." As they gathered the last of Kyra's supplies, the atmosphere shifted again. The excitement of their mission mixed with the fear of what lay ahead. Mark felt the weight of the moment, knowing that the risks they were taking could change everything. With the backpack loaded and their resolve strengthened, they set out into the night. The city streets were dimly lit, the neon lights flickering ominously above them. Mark kept a close watch on their surroundings, acutely aware of the dangers lurking in the shadows. "Stay close," he whispered to Kyra, who walked with a purpose, her gaze sharp and alert. "We'll stick to the alleys and avoid the main roads as much as possible." Kyra nodded, her focus unwavering. "Good plan. The fewer eyes on us, the better." As they moved through the narrow streets, Mark's thoughts drifted back to the moment he had first met Kyra. The stark contrast between her fear and defiance had struck him deeply, igniting a desire to prove that not all humans were to be feared. Now, as they navigated the darkness together, he could feel that initial bond growing stronger. "Tell me more about your people," he prompted, trying to ease the tension. "What is life like for the Celian?" Kyra glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "Our culture is complex, rooted in stoicism and emotional control. We believe that true strength comes from within and that pain, both physical and emotional, can teach us valuable lessons. But there is beauty in our connection to one another. We value harmony, and our society is built on mutual respect." "That sounds incredibly profound," Mark said, genuinely intrigued. "It's different from what I know. We often struggle to find that balance." She regarded him closely, perhaps searching for any hint of insincerity. "Your world is chaotic. It's filled with conflict and ambition. But I see the potential for change within you, Mark. That's why I'm willing to trust you." He felt a swell of gratitude at her words. I want to be worthy of that trust. After several blocks of stealthy maneuvering, they finally reached the outskirts of the city. The towering remnants of the old communication tower loomed in the distance, a skeletal silhouette against the night sky. "There it is," Kyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We must be cautious. The area is likely patrolled." Mark surveyed the surroundings. He could see a faint light flickering in the shadows, hinting at a guard presence. "We'll need to wait for them to change shifts," he murmured. "We can't risk being caught." Kyra's eyes narrowed, a flash of vulnerability crossing her face. "If they capture me again, it could mean my life. And for you, they won't treat you kindly for helping me." Mark swallowed hard, the reality of their situation settling in. "I won't let that happen," he declared, the determination surging within him. "We'll find a way to keep you safe." Kyra turned to him, her expression softening. "You've shown bravery already, Mark. You have no idea how much that means to me. In my culture, loyalty is everything. You've already proven yours." He smiled faintly, the weight of her words bolstering his resolve. "Let's focus on getting you home first. After that, we'll figure out the rest." They remained silent, their breaths synchronized as they waited in the shadows. The night grew colder, and the tension crackled in the air. As the minutes passed, Mark felt his pulse quicken, aware that time was slipping away. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the flickering light began to move away from their position. "Now!" Mark whispered, and they slipped out from their hiding spot, making their way toward the tower. The structure was old but still stood tall, a testament to its previous glory. They approached cautiously, Mark checking every corner as they ascended the creaking staircase. The chill of the night seeped through the cracks, and an unsettling silence enveloped them. Once at the top, Kyra quickly set to work, pulling out her equipment. Mark kept watch, his heart racing as he scanned the area for any signs of movement. "This is it," Kyra said, her fingers flying over the controls. "If I can connect to the network, we'll have a chance." Mark nodded, his eyes darting to the door. "Just be quick. We don't have much time." As she worked, he felt a surge of pride. Kyra was strong, resourceful, and driven by a determination that inspired him. He wanted to protect her, to ensure her safety, and help her reconnect with her people. Suddenly, Kyra's fingers paused over the device. "Mark, there's a problem," she said, her voice laced with urgency. "The signal is being blocked. We'll have to reroute it. Can you do it?" Mark asked, the worry creeping into his voice. "I can try," she replied, her brow furrowing in concentration. "But it will take time, and we might attract attention. Then we'll make it work," he said resolutely. "I'm right here with you." As she continued to work, Mark's mind raced with thoughts of what would happen if they were caught. He could envision the horror she would face, captured again and taken back to those who had hurt her. He would never allow that to happen. The minutes dragged on, and just as hope began to fade, the device suddenly lit up. "I'm in," Kyra exclaimed, her expression shifting from fear to determination. "Now I can send the message." "Do it," Mark urged, keeping his eyes on the door. "Hurry!" As Kyra began to type out the message, Mark felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, hope, and an unyielding desire to protect the woman who had challenged everything he thought he knew about interstellar relationships. Suddenly, the door to the tower burst open, and a group of men entered, their faces illuminated by the light of their handheld devices. "Hey, what are you doing here?" one of them shouted, his voice filled with authority. Mark's heart raced. "Kyra, go," he yelled, pushing her toward the back of the room. "I'll hold them off." "No," she shouted, her voice rising with panic. "I can't leave you." "We don't have a choice," he insisted, glancing over his shoulder at the advancing figures. "Just finish the message." "Mark, please," she cried, desperation in her eyes. "Just do it," he urged, his voice breaking. With trembling hands, Kyra continued typing, but Mark could see the fear etched on her face. He positioned himself between her and the intruders, ready to fight if it came to that. "Stop right there," one of the guards shouted, advancing menacingly. Mark took a deep breath, his heart pounding. You won't take her, he declared, standing tall despite the odds stacked against him. She's not your property. The guard hesitated, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Step aside, or we'll take you both. Kyra finished the message and pressed send, her eyes wide with fear and determination. It's done, she shouted, relief washing over her. Now we can go. But before they could move, the guards surged forward. Mark braced himself, ready to fight, but Kyra grabbed his arm, pulling him back. Trust me, she cried, her silver eyes blazing with determination. We have to leave now. With a powerful shove, she pushed him toward the exit, their path illuminated by the guards' flashlights. Mark could feel the chaos erupting around them, but he didn't look back. He followed Kyra, their adrenaline propelling them forward as they raced down the staircase and out into the night. The cool air hit them like a slap, and they dashed into the cover of the surrounding trees. Heart racing, Mark glanced back at the tower, the guards now pouring out in search of them. Keep running, Kyra urged, her voice breathless as they sprinted through the underbrush. They navigated the terrain, the adrenaline driving them as they put distance between themselves and the tower. Each step felt like a victory, but Mark knew that the danger was far from over. Where do we go now? He gasped, glancing over at Kyra, whose focus was unyielding. Follow me, she shouted, leading them through the dense forest. There's a safe spot nearby where we can hide and regroup. As they ran, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that their moment of triumph had come at a cost. They had sent the message, but the pursuit was just beginning. The shadows of the past were closing in, and he could only hope that their bond was strong enough to withstand whatever lay ahead. Finally, they reached a small clearing where the trees parted, revealing a hidden cabin. Kyra pulled open the door, and they rushed inside, locking it behind them. Panting heavily, they leaned against the wall, trying to catch their breath. Mark turned to Kyra, who was staring at the floor, her expression a mixture of relief and fear. We made it, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. Kyra nodded, but the weight of their situation was clear in her eyes. But we're not safe yet. They will come looking for us. Mark took a deep breath, the reality settling in again. We need a plan, he said. We have to prepare for whatever happens next. Kyra's gaze lifted, her expression fierce. We'll fight back. I won't let them take me again. Not after everything we've gone through. Mark felt a swell of admiration for her resilience. We'll face them together, he promised. I'm not going anywhere. As they strategized their next move, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a line. They had both stepped into the unknown, but in that moment, he knew they would confront the shadows of the past as a united front, two souls intertwined, ready to face whatever darkness awaited them.